It's July 3rd, 1863. The flags are unfurled, and the cannons have been firing for what seems like forever. The lines of gray-clad men are stepping out from behind their concealment. And amongst those gray-clad men is a father and son who are going across that field together. What would you do in that moment if your son was there dying on that field? That's what we're going to talk about today. There was a man named Michael Spessard. He was 41 and came from Craig County, Virginia. He was captain of Company C, 28th Virginia Infantry, Garnett's Brigade, Pickett's Division. On the third day at Gettysburg, July 3rd, 1863, he led his men into the charge. His son, Hezekiah, was with him. The boy was a private in his father's company. They hadn't gone far before Hezekiah went down. He was hit bad. Captain Spessard stopped and knelt beside him. Another officer saw it, Colonel Eppa Hunton of the 8th Virginia. His son wrote about it later in his father's memoir. Hunton had seen Spessard on the ground, cradling the boy's head in his lap. He looked up and said, "Look at my poor boy, Colonel." Hunton said the boy was likely dead by then. Spessard kissed him on the head and laid his head gently down. Then he rose, sword to shoulder, and said, "Forward, boys!" and kept going. Later, historians would say he fought like a man possessed at the angle. They escaped capture somehow. He made it back to Seminary Ridge. He got his son to the hospital. Hezekiah lived 16 more days, and he died on July 19th. No one knew for a long time where he died or where he was buried. His name wasn't on the hospital records at Bream's Mill or Curran's Farm. These were Confederate field hospitals west of town. Dr. Reeves kept a roster of the wounded there, and Dr. O'Neill kept one of the graves. Hezekiah was not listed on either. If the Confederates didn't move him, then maybe the Union did. But his name wasn't in the records at the 2nd Corps Hospital at Schwartz's Farm either. For a time, his fate was a mystery. But after other historians started digging, they found Spessard's records at the National Archives, and it said Hezekiah died on July 19th, No place given, no grave listed. Then, those same historians found a letter in the Spessard family papers, stored in Newcastle, Virginia. It said Union soldiers from the 3rd Corps had taken Ezekiel from the field. He died at their hospital just south of the Schwartz farm. That explained the missing records, but the grave was lost, poorly marked, or not marked at all. Dr. O'Neill didn't find it when he later recorded the burials. Ezekiel was likely one of the unknowns sent to the Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond after the war. Michael Spessard probably went to Bream's Mill after the battle looking for his son. He would have found nothing. He left Gettysburg not knowing if the boy lived or died. His wife's letters told him the truth later that July. More loss followed. In 1864, his second wife and daughter died. He kept going. He fought on with the 28th Virginia until the end. He surrendered at Appomattox. After the war, he went home to Craig County and farmed again. He married a 3rd time and had 5 more children. He served as sheriff and held public office, and he died in 1889. They buried him alone on his farm. The grave was forgotten for many years. Then a family member and a few men from the Sons of Confederate Veterans found it, fenced it, and set a new stone in for him. Spessard never went back to Gettysburg. Neither did Hunton. For them, it was too much loss, and there were too many ghosts. The 28th had fought at First Manassas when the air was hot with gunpowder and green with the sap of summer. And after that, they belonged to Pickett and then to Garnett and Hunton. Men get passed along like rifles or mules in war. Names change, commanders change, but the marching and the dying stay the same. The 28th Virginia was part of the Army of Northern Virginia, and they followed it from the swamps and red clays of Williamsburg all the way to the rolling hills of Gettysburg, except for a time when they went with Longstreet to Suffolk, where the soil was softer, but the hunger was the same. From there, they went down into Carolina, quiet and damp, and still torn by small skirmishes. After that, Richmond, where they were held on detached duty, waiting, guarding, watching, wondering where the next fight would be. It came, as it always did, and they were pulled north again, toward Cold Harbor, where the soil turned to dust, and the dying was quick and senseless. They held the line in the trenches at Petersburg, month after month, while the world around them froze, thawed, and burned again. Rats moved among the dead and dying like they were a part of the company. The fire never stopped. Sometimes the cannon smoke hung so thick that you could breathe it like weather. Then came the final days, the long retreat westward, the hunger sharpening each man's ribs, and the sky always the same tired gray. They fought near Appomattox, those last scattered, hopeless battles, and most of what was left of them was caught at Sailor's Creek. That was the end of it. Back in April of 1862, they had been 600 strong. At Williamsburg, 40 were hit, dead or wounded. At Seven Pines, 47 more. Then came 2nd Manassas, 12 dead, 52 wounded. Men buried where they fell or laid out on the heat with coats pulled over their faces. In the Maryland campaign, they lost another 8 killed and 54 wounded. The numbers never stopped adding up. At Gettysburg, 333 men went in, and half came out broken or carried out still. Their flag, ragged and burned and shot through, was taken by the men of the 1st Minnesota. Those flags fall like men do. In the final tally, just 3 officers and 51 men were left to stack arms and surrender on April 9, 1865. They were tired, silent, and thin. They had followed the war from beginning to end, and now there was nothing left to follow. The war had ended, and the men were still standing, though many of them no longer knew why. Captain Spessard was there with the 28th Virginia through most of the events in the history of that unit. His son was there with him all the way up to Gettysburg. I can imagine it was probably a comfort for him to have his son with him, although he did have to keep some distance because he was an officer. But having someone there with you that you're familiar with, your son of all things, I'm sure, was a big comfort to him during the times that they fought together in the American Civil War. And I'm also sure that he probably was deathly afraid of the very thing that happened at Gettysburg to his son. Now, I don't tell these stories lightly. These things are about men that fight and die for whatever reasons that they have fought for, and their family members. They are related to each other in probably the most personal way possible, a father and son, a parent to a child. Can you imagine going off to war and your child wants to go off with you, hold a gun, and put himself in danger while you're there leading the very unit that he's a part of? I don't think that myself personally, I could put myself through that. And not just because of my own feelings of it, but the safety of my child. I can imagine it probably burned at him forever, especially after the ultimate thing happened, when his own son died on the field of battle. And he probably knew that at some point his son would become one of those casualties. But he probably hoped that it would not be as bad as death. Captain Spessard survived. And he would go on, like we said, to have another family. And one would like to think that maybe, if given a second chance, maybe he would probably tell his son not to fight, not to be a part of it, in order to save him. But no one would know except for the man. And the fact that the man never returned to Gettysburg for any visits, for any reunions, or anything, probably says it all. Because why would you want to go back to that place where you lost one of the most important things in your life? Well, there you have it, folks. We like to try to keep it even here and tell stories about both Union and Confederate soldiers, and try to talk about the personal stories in that war to highlight some of the things that a lot of people don't talk about, which is the more human side, and those individual soldiers' stories, which is the most important part of history. We hope you liked the show today, and we hope you come back and check out some more. If you want to see some of these places that we talk about, we go to them in person and do videos on our YouTube channel, History with Waffles. Just go over to YouTube and search History with Waffles, and you'll find me there, and you'll see the videos that we have from Sailors Creek all the way to Gettysburg and even further south. We cover it all. This is Civil War Stories with Waffles. We'll see you on the field.